Hey everybody, it's Christy back with another interview for Mentally Kills podcast. Today I have Steve that I'm going to bring out to meet you. So let's greet him, bring him in.
Hey,
Hi,
how's
how
it
are you?
going? Good, I'm
Good,
good.
good.
Glad to
I'm
be
just been
here.
a long day of work, so I'm feeling it, the hump day
Hey,
blues.
yeah, I hear you.
So I always like to start off these interviews by kind of giving you a minute and the floor to tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my name is Steve. I'm 47 from Connecticut. Um, I have two daughters. My job right now, well, I had an NDE when I was young, near-death experience. My job right now is I work part-time with elderly patients who have Alzheimer's and dementia, and I also work as a healer and basically activator of consciousness.
Very nice. So kind of like a spirit guide in a way.
Yes and no. I would say it's more sparking the nervous system to heal itself, but that's another story for another
Another
time.
day. Got it. Got it. So, I know when me and you had spoken previously, you don't like to go by, the official diagnosis, but is there any symptoms that you've kind of suffered from or had to learn to deal with?
Yeah, for sure. I would say more so in my early years. I've since sort of figured out my consciousness as a playground and worked through it, but in my early years, it was bipolar, ADHD, um, a few others that's kind of hard to remember, but I suffered with dark thoughts for a long time, dark feelings, voices, and all these things just continually snowballing into patterns of self harm and patterns of really, I would say, self destruction. A lot of that led me to self destruction. I felt like everything was always so chaotic because that's what I experienced when I was a child.
Gotcha. And what did you do to kind of help with that, to cope?
I started to change how I had enough of the bad to
Right.
where I became sort of angry with God. And I didn't totally believe in God. I knew there was a God, but I don't know if he believed in me, he or she. And I started to really take everything and give it to that surrender place. I surrendered it. And I started to let go of the need to control and the need to really control the outcomes of situations, where I would place my feelings and things like that.
Gotcha. Okay.
What I was
Um,
creating, I would be started to be very mindful of what I was creating, because up to that point I had created my own hell in a way.
I understand that. I think we all can kind of relate to some degree about creating our own hell. But and that helps you kind of manage the symptoms that you were experiencing by kind of tapping into that, let's say, higher power or higher way of thinking.
Yeah, for sure. It when I started to change my thoughts and what thoughts and feelings I was putting into certain situations that I was in, and I was very negative at one time. I would put negative thoughts and I would complain and I would complain, and it didn't help anything. So I'm like, let me try to change what I'm introducing to this situation. I started to witness patterns that I was repeating, and I would be, you're talking 10 years of drug use and overdose, really a lot of self harm, not wanting to be here anymore.
So
But I
suicidal
started to,
ideation.
what's that?
Suicide ideation.
Yeah, yeah, a lot of suicidal ideation. At one point, I had, as you know, I was completely run over by a car for my NDE. I played a lot of sports. I also had another car accident where I flipped over a car 5 times, and I was riddled with pain in my body, which developed into an addiction on the pain medication the doctor gave me, which just accumulated the dark thoughts. At one point, I was on like 20 to 30 a day, and I didn't see any way out of that dark spiral but death. And that I knew at the time, I knew or thought that I was going early. It didn't matter. People would be happier with me gone. And something clicked in me that told me start introducing different energy into the situation. Of course, some understanding came from my near death, but it wasn't all of it. It was my decision. And it was my decision to either stay in that place and repeat patterns over and over, or release that pattern that I was in, where my soul was guiding me continuously to this negative energy. You know, I had to introduce a different me into the situation. As hard as it was, I had to find ways to change my thoughts and feelings, especially about judging other people.
Yeah.
Um, you know, that was a big one, releasing my judgment on other people, and accepting myself. I had to accept myself and everything that I was at the time before I could move forward. I couldn't keep resisting that part of me.
I think that's kind of the hardest part too, in my opinion, is, number one, not looking at people negatively is one,
Hmm.
because it's just a trained or learned behavior. It's kind of like what we all do. We all look at someone and we're immediately looking for something negative.
Yeah,
Like, oh,
yeah,
their shoes untied, or hair's out of place or something. That's just examples, but you get what I'm saying. Like, we
yeah,
immediately as a society look for something negative.
for sure. I
And we are
always looked for the flaw first in
right.
people. And I
And that's just
realized that was such a negative aspect of myself. And I
yeah.
became arrogant in my younger years. And I would, you know, date different women, and I would literally abandon them if they had one little flaw. And I never realized this came back to childhood trauma of all the times I was abandoned and
Yeah.
felt unworthy with myself.
And now how do you feel about yourself?
God, I love myself. I love this place that we're in, this world. And I'm
Love
a
that.
firm believer that, like, okay, we're either in the Garden of Eden or we're in hell, depending on what our nervous system is doing. And controlling the flow of our nervous system is important, because there's so many things out there that are trying to tell us who we are, trying to tell us you can be prettier, you can be skinnier, you can be stronger if you do this. And we're sort of selling out for approval
Yeah,
when we're already approved. And the only one that can give us our approval is ourselves.
that's right. And I love that you said it like that, because the only person, first of all, when we get up, when we go to sleep, whether we're next to somebody or not, it's us that we deal with before we close our eyes or open them,
Hmm.
internally and externally. So you have to fully love yourself, which for me means accepting complete light and complete dark, complete positive or complete negative. That's how I
Exactly.
consider it. It's literally going back and saying, like, yeah, I'm kind of a piece of crap, but I'm working on it and I forgive myself for it. So
Yeah, and realizing nobody's perfect, being on the healing journey is enough. That's all you have to do. You don't have to get to the end point in a day. You don't have to get there in a week. You don't have to get there in years. Just be on the journey of self-reflection and observing your character you're playing, and what you want to introduce into this sort of movie you're making.
beautifully said. So I know that you are more into the spiritual aspect when it comes to mental health, and that has really helped you along your path with kind of dealing with your symptoms. Have you sought out any kind of like therapies or anything like that for that, or you just kind of were okay with your own path?
I would say the only therapy I had was when I was in my teens, when I tried to run away, and my mother, um, God bless her, um, she wasn't around a lot. My father worked night shift. My mother would be out at the bar. She literally told me, you know, face to face, I did cocaine while you went without food. And I would wake up in the middle of the night. My older brother would be sleeping, and nobody would be around. I was terrified of the dark. So at 13, I basically tried to run away. It was like a cry for help. And my mother put me in a children's hospital, locked me away for months on end. I'm in this floor of the children's hospital, a locked
Sorry, it's lagging
floor.
a little bit.
That's okay. I'm in a locked floor of a children's hospital for months on end, getting therapy. Meanwhile, the only thing I'm thinking in the back of my mind is, don't say the wrong thing. When am I going to get to go home? And that
Yeah,
sort of that fear of me thinking I'll never go home again sort of overrode a lot of the therapy that was in there. I got to witness basically kids just going crazy and attacking each other. And was never that kind of a kid. I would say, a rebel and out on my own a lot, but I was never a harmful child. So that was traumatic in itself. I think a lot more harm came from that, from my mother abandoning me again, than good came out of it. So there was therapy there. During my spiritual awakening, there was uh, there was a point where I was like suicidal and chaos just going through my nervous system and my mind. So one day I'm sitting in my backyard, and it turns out my ex-girlfriend now uh, called the cops on me. So they walked into my backyard because I told her I didn't want to be here anymore. Um, so they walk into my backyard to basically say, "Oh, you have to go." So I go down to the hospital. They put me on a gurney, wheel me into a room. A psychiatrist comes in or whatever, and she starts asking me different questions. Does the TV talk to you? Does do the pets talk to you, et cetera, et cetera.
I would
At the
just
time,
like
I
to
was having a
say
lot of sorry.
that as somebody with psychosis, that is a valid question. I'm laughing too, but I've been asked that question and that has happened. So that is a
Oh
real
yeah,
thing.
I know it happens for sure. It was funny, I guess, looking back at it at the time. Um, so I'm in there, and they're asking me all these questions. Me being an expert at sarcasm, I say only during commercials, and sure enough, she wanted to check me in, and another doctor. I'm in there for like 24 hours or something. I'm like laying there. I'm like, do I get a magazine or something? I'm the most docile person in there, and they had to take me out of the room to put somebody who was really flipping out into the room, and they wanted me to sign a waiver, I guess, to before I could check in for insurance. And something clicked in my head. That's my intuition. Something said, well, don't sign it. So I said, what happens if I don't sign this? Oh, we'll have another doctor come and talk to you. So I said, not the same doctor who's 78 years old and doesn't understand anything I'm telling her, because I was trying to tell her about the spiritual side and some of the psychic stuff I was experiencing.
Yeah,
They said, yeah, different doctor. So a younger doctor came in, and I explained it to her, and she checked me out right away. And what got me through that was my faith, really. And it helped me to kind of see who really loved me and who did not. And it was okay to let go of the people who didn't love you, you know?
yeah, that's very well said.
So there was
So,
those stints many years ago for sure.
okay. Now, I like to we're not going to get into the last question yet, but I do have one more before then. Um, do you do any kind of, when you get really stressed out or really overwhelmed, and that's normally when we'd have symptoms for conditions, is there something that you do to prevent that, like meditation or drawing or writing?
Meditation and nature. I continuously, probably a couple times a day, I go out into nature and I do breathing. And that fills me with the charged energy of nature and brings me into that rhythm of peace.
Peace,
Like
yeah.
I've done it for so long now. Now I know when my nervous system is overloaded. I also do a lot of cleansing on my subconscious, which is where a lot of the programs of trauma are stored. So I speak that out of me. I speak into me the programming of that I'm already worthy, I'm loved, et cetera, et cetera. And I've learned how to reprogram myself in a way. But nature's a big part of that. I have to be out in nature in order to not be overwhelmed, overloaded, because we're always processing so much data that we don't even realize.
Gotcha. Very well said. So, to end it, because we are getting close to the end of our interview, I'm going to back out and give you the floor. And if you want to give a word of encouragement or have any final thoughts, I'll let you do that to anybody watching. And then I'll come back and we'll end it.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd say final words of encouragement are claim what you are already, as an energy of love. That's how you came into this body as a baby. We're born, we go through the world, and we get all these programs and all these experiences. And if they're never really dealt with, they run into the background and they can sort of wreak havoc on our lives. So, claiming that space back from our trauma within our nervous system was really big for me, to say, I deserve this. I'm taking back this space to be healthy, to flow with life force energy, with love, with peace, with joy. Reconnecting to the things you did as a child is really important. Doing things for yourself. That was something I didn't realize how important it was, to go out and go to a fair by myself, to go out and take myself out to eat. And all these things, we wait on others to go do that with them. Um, and also, don't trade your identity for approval. Come to the realization that you are love inside that body that went through this world, and you can return to that state of love whenever you want, whenever you claim it, and not to sell that out just to be liked, to get love from someone else, because you already are love.
That was beautifully said. Very beautifully said. Well, thank you very much for your time and giving us, your thoughts and your experiences. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me on. I
Yep.
appreciate it.
Okay. And we'll put your information in the comments when we post the video so people can find you and reach out if they want to talk to you or have any questions.
Thank you very much.
Mhm. So, I am a big fan of this interview, mostly because he takes a non traditional method to handling his symptoms. He kind of grabbed it by the horns and said, I don't need to go to traditional therapy or take medications. I can handle it myself by tapping into my higher power or higher way of thinking. So, with that being said, this is Christy from Mentally Kills, and this has been another interview, and we'll see you on the next one.